You know, Jake had disappeared. It was pouring out, and I called 911, and he wasn't far. He was still in our neighborhood, but I was standing out in the rain. I'm on the phone with 911, and they're like, well, what's your address? And I'm like, I don't know. I was literally 2 steps from my house. Like, that is what stress does to your brain, right?
Montgomery County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
Welcome to another episode of Voices of Service. I'm Cassandra Tressler, and this is Assistant Chief Darren Frank. We're really excited to introduce our guests for today. These 2 women are powerhouses for our community. They have spoken on Capitol Hill, received governor's awards, and been invited to the White House. But the thing that drives them is the fact that they are literally giving a voice to those who are not always heard. Stay tuned as we speak with Officer Laurie Reyes, who is a 25-year veteran of our department and who has been running the Autism, IDD, Alzheimer's, and Dementia unit for 20 years.
We will also be speaking with Jenn Lynn. She is a mom to a young adult with autism. She's also the founder of Empowering Autism Caregivers.
Stay tuned, stay safe, and stay connected. Laurie and Jenn, thank you guys so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate it, absolutely. So could you just go ahead and tell us about your program and how everything got started?
So in about 2004, I was a pregnant officer, and I was fortunate enough to been tasked with kind of looking into, the increase in calls we were receiving for individuals that were wandering that had autism or other intellectual developmental disabilities, Alzheimer's and dementia.
Okay.
So 2004, that's how it started.
When you say wandering, you mean missing?
Yeah, missing.
They're away from their home?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Thank you for clarifying that. So someone who is wandering and elopement is a common term in the autism IDD community and in the Alzheimer's dementia community too.
Okay.
So it started with the wandering and elopement. That's another common term.
Okay. And elopement.
Yeah, elopement's a common term. Again, it's wandering from a place that's a safe location most likely,
okay.
and they wander off.
Okay.
And it's common with the individuals who have autism, but also with Alzheimer's and dementia. So I was tasked by saying, we're seeing more calls with this. What are we going to do? So 2004, I said, all right, well, I am going to just start immersing myself mostly in the autism, IDD, intellectual developmental disabilities community. Started going to conferences, just showing up and saying, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to learn. How can I learn? What do you want law enforcement to know? So from there, the program grew, and we have kind of a 5-piece parts of our program. So first is education and training, officers, individuals, caregivers. Then the follow-up piece. We check in after a call and say, hey, what could we do better? What could we do different? How can we help you with other resources? Empowerment, which was a piece that myself and Jenn worked on a lot, empowering those with awards to families that have helped us.
Okay.
And we have our outreach presentations. Anyone who will listen, we say, how can you help those who have autism IDD? And lastly, you can't have a good response piece without all of that in place. So our response piece is very robust and educated because of all of that.
Fantastic. So then you say the empowerment piece is how, Jenn, you kind of fit in. And if I'm not mistaken, I feel like it's also the educational piece, because I know that you do come out for the education that you guys put on. So would you mind kind of telling me, how did you end up together?
We first met, many years ago at a walk, a fundraiser, right?
Okay.
And that's when I introduced my son, Jake, to Laurie. And they hit it off, Jake and his big cheeseburger earmuffs. And then we actually had an incident at our house where the neighbors called police on our son, who was out in the driveway, and he was just really acting up, just being silly. But it was February or January. He had no clothes on, because he had the moment that, oh, I'm going to change my clothes. And then he realized he left homework in the car. So he just ran outside to get his homework, but it was freezing, so he was yelling. And the neighbors called police because they knew that I was home alone a lot with him, and he's a big, strong kid. They didn't know if he was hurt or if I was hurt or if my husband was hurt. Like, why would he be yelling help in the driveway? So then the police came, and we had an interaction with 2 officers, and one was like wonderful, and one was a little prickly, but still fine. But then we had just met, so I'm like, oh, Laurie, I just decided to follow up. And part of this program is to make sure that there's a positive interaction with law enforcement, right? That's Laurie's genius. So she came to the house and fell in love with Jake, as people do, and learning to talk with him and how he says things. I think it was
I said you're going to need to be honest all the time.
tell the truth all the time. And he said, I can't tell the truth if I'm scared. And then Laurie's light bulb went off. And my light bulb went off, and I'm like, oh, that's a good one, and none of us can, right? When any of us are heightened or scared or anxious, you set your keys down, it's like, oh my God, what did I do with my keys? Where did I put? You can't find anything, right? None of us can process that way, but when there's autism involved and brain, misfunction, right? You can't put anything together. So that was the beginning of this relationship, and it just kind of grew.
And it is all the pieces.
It is.
You're right.
You're
all
right.
of the pieces.
Yes,
It's not
it is
just
all the
empowerment,
pieces. And then
but
right,
it's
and
all
then
the
Laurie
pieces.
started having Jake teach a class, and we had a little speech that he would read and interact with the officers. And it's really true. Like, you can have people talk to you about autism all day until you get Jake in there, who's hugging on all the officers and doing jumping jacks and push-ups, or even a Harrison who's nervous and trying so hard to hold it together. Those are really, really important learning tools for law enforcement, because then they can even learn how. Like, we would get out into the lobby after a training, and the guys would line up and oh my gosh, thank you, and they would interact with Jake, and it's a real learning lesson at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I had the privilege of actually learning with you, and Jake was there as well. And so it was a very hands-on experience of what it was like to be in the presence of somebody with autism. It was a fantastic learning opportunity for me.
That was the recruits. Yeah.
It was.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was one of the first times that I got to meet you as well.
Yeah.
Or at least in this
Yeah.
capacity,
Yeah.
right? Fantastic. So how did that kind of evolve? Like, I understand you had this relationship. You guys become this dynamic duo. You're going in with Jake, and you guys are traveling around the country doing this?
All through Maryland.
We
Okay.
did well, with Montgomery County, we did
Yeah.
Maryland, but
Yeah.
then Pathfinders for Autism picked up
Right.
Jake, and then we did a lot of the state, but then when Jake went to school, then Laurie and I just kind of continued
Continued
and
it.
we've done CIT and different conferences together, because I think we can by now finish each other's sentences. We're like an old married couple.
The dynamic duo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So when did you all's partnership start?
Well, Jake,
just said that,
2011.
2011.
We're trying to
okay.
figure out, 2011.
About 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going on 12, 13 years now
Yeah.
of the dynamic duo here.
Yeah.
And now you got sucked into the Laurie vortex. That's what we call it. So Laurie used to be stationed at the academy, and she's got this energy. We call her the vortex, because every time I would go down the hallway, there'd be like 5 people in front of Laurie's office talking to her because of her energy. But you put that energy in this program, and I remember. You've come a long way with the program. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember
my leg shaking when I was teaching. That's
Yeah.
how far I've come. My leg would shake because I was so nervous to
Right.
teach. So
Right,
that's a
but-
long way to be in front of a camera and all of that.
Sure, but more importantly, for our response in Montgomery County, I mean, I don't think I'm overstating it that you are a national leader in this field of helping educate officers, helping advocate for people, and bring attention to this so that we can deal with it better. It's interesting because we just had a council session the other day, right? And they're talking about what are we doing to write in a policy somewhere about how we're responding to helping people with different disabilities.
Yeah.
And the fact is, we've been doing this for 20 years, and we've got a leader in the clubhouse here that's directing us and teaming up with other folks to learn how to do it. I mean, I know the lessons that you've given us and educated me through the years, and all of us officers. I mean, some of the programs that remember the T-shirts.
Yeah. Yeah, still have those.
Still have the T-shirts.
Autism IDD night out.
Yep.
Yeah, all kinds of, just teaching recruits was a big thing. You know,
Right.
back then no one was teaching the recruits. You know, it wasn't taught about the dynamics of autism and IDD.
I never never
Yeah,
saw a
we
thing
didn't
about
receive
it.
that 25 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Never saw a thing about it until you took up that mantle, and then obviously with the introduction of Jake and Jenn, man, it really becomes real. I've had the pleasure of interacting with Jake and to see how I guess understand how his mind works and understand the functioning and what happens. It causes us to have an understanding that we can put into play in the field.
And some tools and
Yes.
some strategies for both
Yes.
individuals
Absolutely.
and for officers.
Right.
Like what strategies can we come together to have a positive, safe interaction for
Right.
everybody?
Right. And we started talking about wandering.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to the people that don't have the knowledge that we have, how can you just let someone wander away?
Yeah.
It's not that easy.
No, you can be the greatest parent of all time,
Yes.
and we still average 3 to 8 fines a week.
Yes.
Parents have to sleep, caregivers have to sleep, and so it's so rare to have something that's, that's a criminal matter. It's usually just a mom or dad or sibling that's winging trying to raise a kid.
Right. And given a little freedom, it's not like, we can't lock these
That's true.
these kids down. We can't lock these people down. We want them to live.
Find that
Right.
balance. So I
Yes.
always say to a parent, you're not always going to get it right? You're going to have these bumps in the road is what I call them. You're going to have the bumps in the road, and that's why we're here. And that's why when we tell a parent, call 911 if your child's missing, we back it up with an officer who'll look at that parent and say, you were just trying to sleep, but we found your child and we brought him home and we're going to give you some resources.
Right.
Well, and that's part of
Yeah.
the training too. I think it's really important to say, because it's very easy to judge, right? So if you can have an officer come to a call where a 2 or 3 year old, or even, Jake ran in his
20-year-old.
teens, and he ran. So to have law enforcement in the house tell you that it's okay and that you're
Yeah.
not a bad parent and that we know you're trying your best to do this, but literally, a parent needs to take a shower. You shut your eyes for 10 minutes and they're fast.
Yeah.
These
Or give
guys
you
are
some
gone
tools.
and you don't even know, right?
Yeah.
So it's so important. I think that parent piece is huge. The empowerment is not only for the children, it's also for the parent to be okay at being a parent of a kid with autism, and it's really hard. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so hard.
Yesterday when we spoke,
Yeah.
you mentioned something. You said that even after you had a relationship with Laurie, there was still a moment when you knew that you needed to call the police.
Yep.
point.
That you were timid. You were afraid
Oh,
to
I
do
was.
so.
I absolutely was. I'm,
It gives me goosebumps.
I know, right? And Laurie, she's adorable and petite. She sits right here on my shoulder, and I hear, call 911. Jake had disappeared. It was pouring out, and I called 911, and he wasn't far. He was still in our neighborhood, but I was standing out in the rain. I'm on the phone with 911, and they're like, well, what's your address? And I'm like, I don't know. I was literally 2 steps from my house. Like, that is what stress does to your brain, right? And I could hear Laurie, and I'm like, oh, Laurie told me to call. And by the time I was done cursing out Laurie in my mind, they had triangulated me. They're like, there's a body of water. Is he going to go to water? Do. And they had it down, and it was done. And they were there. And then and extra police were there. People that just happened to be in the neighborhood knew the name come across, and they showed up,
Officers you knew came too. Yeah.
Yeah, friends that
Yeah.
knew us and friends that just were driving by that lived up, up the street, that they were.
And that's not unusual.
Yeah.
For
Right.
not only calling 911, but having an officer respond that you've already had a relationship with
Right.
is huge. That familiar face, and then at the end, me or the other officer saying, okay, here's some ideas that might help this next time.
Right.
Right here, maybe you need to install.
I just love
yeah.
what you just said right there. You said that might help us
Oh,
next
yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Because you
right,
really
right.
come in there and you make it about us,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, or
It's
just
incredible.
but also saying to a mom, we're not upset with you.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, here's your safety kit that
Right.
we're trying to prevent it from happening.
Right.
But doggone it, if it
Right.
happens again, you better hear Laurie in
Little
the back of
Laurie
your
right
head
there.
saying, "Call 911.
Yeah.
It's okay."
Yeah.
That's the most
Right, well,
important.
and you continue to hit on, that's the most important thing for us. And hopefully the parents too, the caregivers, is when when you and I came on the department, this didn't exist, and we could easily just look at, you know, if Jen called because Jake was missing, we could easily just, how did you lose that kid? What's
right.
wrong with, and I can imagine back in the day, there might not have been the response that I know we have now.
Right.
So that's important. And then also, you were talking about the search efforts, right? So it's not just your work has inspired other people, or maybe we're all in the same place, but we have a managed search operations.
They're amazing.
Right. John Green, and back in the...
Polska.
Yes,
Smartest
Polska.
officer on our department.
Let's not get... He's out flying drones somewhere. Let's not get... If I got to see him at another drone presentation. He loves those things.
But these are guys with great big hearts.
Oh, yeah.
And big brains that also find our kids.
But
you know?
we respond, like, I don't think people understand. It's just, we're going to go set up on Smith and Main Street, and then you go over and sit on First and Third, the corner of First and Third.
Right.
Like, we're getting out maps.
Yeah.
We're getting out
Software.
our books that says, we're gathering the data and say, okay, this individual has autism. This individual has Alzheimer's. This individual, and then we start going to work at trying to find this person based on all of the knowledge we have. How can we get them back?
And I'll say one more thing. This one time I actually heard an officer get on the air and talk about getting Skittles, meaning that helps calm someone down. I mean, 25 years ago, no one would even thought of that. So it's that kind of response that creates that trust.
Yep.
But it's important to note that officers get on and they mention things like Skittles and other tools that you've given us through the training, right?
Yeah.
We've learned that through what you are doing. So it's incredible. Now, you mentioned yesterday while we were talking that you also have a network of people that you can reach out to at any time.
Yeah,
right?
I'm so lucky. I think, well, I have a big mouth, right? And I talk to everybody. I embarrass my children on a regular basis. That is true. I talk to everybody.
No, Laurie, it's not true.
No, just very shy. So when I would go to conferences, you know, I would have those interactions and talk to everyone and building those relationships that not only if someone is missing, you know, I have a text thread of folks that I've worked with that I can say, hey, does anybody recognize this kiddo? Or, hey, this family's really in need. They're an immigrant family. They only speak Spanish. They don't have a diagnosis yet. It's like a whole posse that says, how can we help this family? And sometimes we as MCPD and partners are the first line that families ever come in contact with.
It's incredible.
It's a absolutely fantastic resource, and I will tell you, I love this conversation, and my assumption already, because Cassandra and I already talked, we're going to do a lot more talking to you. First of all, because we might just do the whole Vortex experience. Like out
Different topics.
We might just do current events with Laurie, just to get your take on it as we go.
Right.
But
funny stories of police work.
there you go. Yes. All right.
We had one in the elevator just trying to get here.
We did.
But we're definitely going to have Laurie back. But we're also going to talk with you, Jen, and I appreciate it. I know we're going to have another episode where we talk with you about the realities of being a parent with a child with autism, and I think that is something that folks need to hear about, because I don't think people have a true understanding until they can actually hear a caregiver. And that goes for a lot of different things. Until you take a second to hear about it, people want to say, oh, thank you for taking care of someone. But hearing the truth is a whole nother thing, and I think it gives us a great perspective. So I'm really glad you're going to come back and share that with us.
Sure,
So,
I'm honored to be able to share. I mean, there's a lot of unspoken things that happen that stay with the Trench sisters and all the crews. You know, It's you don't know until you know. What do they say? You don't know if you don't know. You don't know. You don't know.
You don't know.
It's
Which is good for
intense.
officers and the community
Yes.
to know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
empathy and understanding, and that's what you bring to the table.
And we're not going to get the services we need unless we start talking about it.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's really where you
Well,
know,
we-
I'm
we-
headed, so.
We can't wait for that conversation. I thank both of you for joining us.
Thank
and,
you.
And
Absolutely.
like I said, we're going to have more conversations.
All
But
righty.
thank you, and I hope everyone stays tuned in.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.